first off, thank you guys so much for allowing me to come here and share my story. Some of you in the crowd know my story. Mark mentioned the play. Fred actually helped with our first 2 performances back there. And I work at Chestnut. I have to get back and take the clients home. I try to work it, and I couldn't get anybody to cover, so here I am. I'll hold on to that resentment for probably 6 months or so. So yes, as he said, I have lived. My story, as I tell it to you, I can only tell it as honest as I can. Because I lived it, I put my family through a lot of grief. I did a lot of things that I wasn't proud of. I have since forgiven myself, and I have made my amends, but I'm not necessarily proud of what I did. But it's in the past. I keep moving forward, which leads me here today to speak to you guys. And I can't be grateful enough to stand up here and tell my story. So, I mean, really the way it worked is I was in high school. I was like a normal teenager. In junior high, I was a straight A student. 5th grade, I had now Chief Carlton as my DARE instructor. In 5th grade, my teacher, Mrs. Roberts, asked us, she said, what do you guys want to do when you get older? I didn't really have an answer. All I said, Mrs. Roberts, is, hey, I just want to make a difference. If you would ask me in 5th grade that I would end up becoming a drug addict, a heroin addict, I would have said, you're crazy. But as I got older, I was a normal teenager, had trouble fitting in. I didn't know if the girls were going to like me. Didn't know if my friends liked me. I had these constant thoughts running in my head. I was 15 years old. I was living with my dad. He moved me out of a school to Bethalto. I didn't like that very much. Missed my friends because I felt like I fit in just a little bit. Well, I started smoking marijuana. First time I did it, I stole it from a family member, and I did it by myself because I was afraid to do it in front of everybody and they'd make fun of me. I did that. My father and I started having problems. We were at each other's throat. It was time for me to move on. He kicked me out. I kind of moved out. It was kind of mutual. I packed my bags. He's like, I want you out of here. I was like, I can't wait to get out of here. And he dropped me off. And I remember the day very, very clearly. When we were driving in the pickup truck, the Chevy pickup truck, he had his aviators on. He was stone cold, driving 10 and 2. And the song on the last about mile was Toto, Hold the Line. I was upset. I was crying. I was mad at my dad, and I wanted him in my life, but he ended up dropping me off. And he told me, hey, I'm no longer your father. He didn't help with child support because him and my mother he paid for my braces. So him paying for my braces, he felt that he didn't have to pay for anything else. So I got stuck in that squabble. We were on welfare. My mother was working the best that she could to provide for me and my brother. And again, I'm a teenager. I'm angry. I'm living in a house. We have no central air. The drywall is swollen in the house. And I'm embarrassed to bring anybody over there, especially girls. As you're going to see, girls is a big part of my story because I was a teenager. I was constantly thinking about that. So I ended up closing out a $100 bank account that my grandmother started for me. And she raised me for about 5-6 years when I first went and moved with my dad when I was a kid. But I went and I withdrew the money. I had to get a job because my mom didn't really have enough money for me to be there and pay for everything. So I went and got a job at IHOP, and I started working with a bunch of older guys. I'm 17 years old, hanging out with 22, 23 years old, and they take me to my first house party, and I drank for the first time. They gave me a Budweiser. I didn't like that very much, so they went and got me whiskey and Sprite, and I liked that. The lights lit up in the room, and I felt like I could talk to the girls. I smoked marijuana. I didn't have to think about the girls, really. I drank alcohol. I could talk to the girls. And when I took my SATs, I was drinking all the time. A buddy of mine was sitting right next to me, Tim, and I'm still probably drunk or hungover. And I think it's funny. He goes, what's wrong with you? I'm sweating. I'm like, I think I'm still drunk. I thought it was a game. And and when we take tests, we tend to, teachers always tell us, if you don't know the answer, select C. And that's all I kept doing was C, 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 C. And I wasn't really thinking about the decisions and how it would impact me. My grades started slacking. I was like a C average. I quit playing baseball and sports and basketball. I started getting really angry at the world. I was mad at the position I was in. I was mad that my dad wasn't talking to me. I was mad that I got bad grades and said it was my teacher's fault because they couldn't teach good enough. So my finger at blame was everywhere, at everybody. I had a hard time looking at me. Then I managed to somehow graduate. My mother and I were at each other's throats like I was with my father. And I moved out with my cousin Amy. I'm on my own. I feel like I'm an adult. I financed my first car. I'm in college, and I end up getting a good job, and I get insurance, private insurance, and I'm like, all right, I feel like a real adult. I got private insurance, I got rent payment, I got a car payment, and got credit cards. I'm living way beyond my means, taking out cash advances, having house parties all the time. Well, I ended up having to get my wisdom teeth pulled, and the doctor ended up giving me Vicodin. The dentist office was really nice about it, though. They're like, hey, we're only going to give you 20. These are dangerous. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I ended up taking a couple, and I really liked them. I'm like, oh, the room like didn't even light up. It's like all the doors left, the house and the walls left, and I was enlightened in a way that I've never been enlightened before. Because within my story, as you can already hear, I'm becoming financially bankrupt, I'm becoming emotionally bankrupt, I'm becoming spiritually bankrupt. And the drugs, I'm taking these drugs and alcohol to try to fill this hole, this empty hole that I couldn't fill. And with that, I ended up liking them, and I found out you can buy them on the street, so I started buying them on the street. This was before the state of Illinois had a prescription drug monitoring system. So the guy I was getting them from was selling me 2 prescriptions. He was selling them for money for crack cocaine and alcohol. And believe it or not, I bought them from a grandmother who, when you would walk in her house, she would be knitting a blanket or whatever she was knitting. She'd be sitting in her chair and she would sell me the pills. And the reason why she sold them is because she needed money because she had a gambling problem. And still to this day, just walking in and seeing her there, she was just like an everyday grandmother. She had the glasses, the curled permed hair, and the little cats that ran around, and she sold her prescription drugs. Well, what ultimately happens is tolerance builds. I'm up to about 10 to 15 Vicodin a day. So what do is I move to Percocets, a little bit stronger of an opiate. And my daughter, I meet my father-in-law's daughter a little before I got really out of control with the pills, but she ends up pregnant with our oldest daughter, and I don't see her for the whole 9 months. I thought I was better than that, and she was on her own until her daughter was born. At this point I realized that I had a problem, because when I wouldn't take them, I'd start sweating, I'd start getting headaches, my joints would hurt. And when my daughter was born, I tried not to take them, but it was about 2 hours after my daughter was born. I ran into the bathroom and I took some. Again, not my proudest moment. It led to the Percocets, and the Percocets led to Oxycontin, and this is when you could take the Oxycontin and you could take the coating off and you could crush them up and you could snort them. I ended up running into a guy that was part of a motorcycle club, and not the kind that volunteers and does stuff in the community to help bolster our community in a positive way. This motorcycle club was known for running meth and guns, and it was a very strange time for me. Because even though I was doing the drugs, I felt out of place. I knew I shouldn't be there. And the whole time, my grandmother was in the back of my mind saying, "What are you doing?" She always taught me when I was younger, in like 3rd, 4th grade, like, if you ever find yourself in a situation, just leave. Just leave. And that's what I wanted to do. But the drugs had such a control over me that I stayed. Luckily, he got picked up by the FBI, so I'm still struggling. And now I'm at the point where I'm stealing. I'm stealing money. I'm stealing jewelry from my family. The people who love me the best, I started treating the worst. I became a hanger-on, and I eventually moved to heroin. And I ended up stealing my brother's bow and arrow for the second time, a different bow, but it was the second time I stole a bow from him. And the best thing that he did is he called the police. I remember the day that he called me. I was in Hartford. I ended up stealing the girl's drugs that she had. She kicked me out, and I'm walking the streets of Hartford. And I took his bow, because in my mind at the time, an active addiction mode. I'm like, I'm going to take it, I'm going to pawn it, I'm going to get it out before he gets off work. Well, I have discovered God in a very, very big way in my life today. And, well, Brandon got off early that day. And he was calling my phone over and over, and I knew what he was calling for. He called me crying, and he is an MMA fighter who can beat me up. But he was crying on the phone. He's like, why would you do that again? And I didn't have an answer. I was crying. I'm like, I can get it back for you. He's like, I've already called the police. Which led me to Madison County Drug Court. I got to meet Judge Knapp. I consider her a very good friend today. Phil White, who is my probation officer, I consider him a very good friend today. We text each other still. Because Mark asked me, he's like, well, we kind of have a question, how do you stay clean and sober? When I first got to drug court, I was okay, but what happened is when I was trying to go through the withdrawals, I would take up to 200 to 300 Tylenol, ibuprofen a week to try to get through the pain of the withdrawals. Well, I started having kidney problems, I started having kidney stones quite frequently. So I'm in drug court, I'm like, oh, I found my excuse, I could take narcotics because I hurt. It's okay, I don't want to hurt, they don't want me, they don't care. You can have an arm chopped off, you're not taking any narcotics. And really what we know now is if you take 3 200 milligram ibuprofens, will give you the same type of pain relief as Vicodin. You may not get the euphoric effect, but your pain will subside. So I end up going to treatment. I get out. About a week later, I end up relapsing. They want me to go to long-term. I go to a 45-day treatment. I come home, and I'm doing all right. But the one thing is once you remove the drugs and alcohol, see, the drugs and alcohol are just a symbol. When you remove the drugs and alcohol, you figure out it's you that you're with. You're with yourself, and you got to figure out your emotions. The guilt and the shame of the things that I did was really overbearing. So what happened is I ended up getting an argument, and the thing that I knew best how to cope was run back to the drugs. I went on a 2-week run, and within that 2-week run, I didn't go to group, and my daughter's mother, my wife, wasn't talking to me. We had a second daughter at this time. So my mom says, hey, I don't want you here when you get off of work, or when I get off of work. And this is for the very first time I believe her. And I'm like, okay. Probation officer calls me, says, hey, why weren't you in group? I'm like, I don't really have an answer. He's like, well, it's because you don't want to go. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. He's like, I want you to turn yourself in. For whatever reason, I said detox, probably so I didn't have to go to jail, because they don't have a red carpet or like fluffy pillows or anything in jail. So I said I want to go to detox. My mom took me to detox. But as soon as Phil and I got off the phone, I hung up the phone and I look out the window, blue sky, oak trees blowing in the wind, and I see the leaves. And for the first time, I said, I want freedom like that. It's not the freedom to really work and make money. It's a freedom to be myself and get away from this. And I fall to my knees and I start praying and I start bawling my eyes out, say, help me. Because I was already in Kettler twice for 2 failed suicide attempts. And then a third time because the counselor talked me into going. I was downright miserable. I couldn't be who I was. I had a goal to buy a house. By the time I was 24, that was gone. I managed to get my associate's degree, but I withdrew from SIUE trying to get my bachelor's. So I'm bawling and I said, help me. And the weirdest thing is the obsession to use the drugs left. I went through the detox. The physical withdrawals were still there, but I went to detox, turned myself in, and I went away for about 7 months. Best thing I could have done. I started stargazing, looking at the sky, and I started talking to God, and I said, hey, what do I got to do? I started getting involved in recovery support programs like the 12 steps. That's one way that I stay clean and sober today, is I continue to look at me. What can I do to be better? Can I be honest? Because there is a step. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory. When we're wrong, promptly admit it. And that's what I do. I have to have accountability. I have to have people around me that want to lift me up and not keep me down. And since then, the inception of Amare, the 501c3, we focus on volunteer projects in the community. Fred's no longer with the Aquatic Center, but I reached out to Alyssa. I said, hey, I got some people in early recovery. I want to give them something to do so they can be part of the community. We went down there for 4 hours. I think got over 30 bags of bagged leaves and trash and helped them out. We're working on a program called PARI, Police Assisted Addiction Recovery Initiative. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Darren. but we're trying to do it in a way that's a little bit different than how it was started in Gloucester, Maine, to where people can call us and say, I want to get into treatment, or they can go to a police station and say, hey, I need help. They call us, we come get them, we get them to detox, and then try to get them into treatment. We're at the MIT Summit last Friday, talking about business solutions of how can we work with smaller businesses or even Amazon. The new community development, Kristen is going to try to get us in Amazon and talk to them about maybe doing a recovery and drug addiction seminar. As long as I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to have 5 years clean and sober this August. And on top of that, April 5th, it's been 4 years since I've had any nicotine or antidepressants. I developed a really good relationship with God. I've developed a lot of relationships with people in the community. I try to be as kind as possible, and again, I fall back on, if I get in a bad mood or something, I fall back on step 10. But I've been given an opportunity to have a platform to talk about this because my community has become very important to me. One, because I have 4 children, 2 sons, 2 and 3, Brody James and Bryce Andrew, and I have Allie, who is 7, who turned 7 yesterday, and Dorian May, who got the worst of my addiction, the worst of my behaviors and decisions. That's one way that I stay clean sober too, is I start saying, I gotta change who I am. I have to change how I treated people and how I treat myself. So yes, I've been given the platform. I've been able to come and share my story. But the big community thing is here today. I get to do that. In the nonprofit, we get to do that. We've grown to a board of 6. And we're like a family, and we say, you know what, let's do something together. And that's what we try to encourage. And I've been meeting people after people and developing those relationships. And that's one way that I stay clean and sober. And it's where change meets action. So thank you guys so much.